Hello and welcome to the show. This is Everything Under the Sun. My name is Ty. Hope all of you are doing amazing out there and taking care of yourselves and giving yourself so much love. I was having a discussion with a friend and we were kind of just, it was a good discussion. I think most of my discussions with the people that I interact with are mostly, good and conductive and in a good way as far as both people listening to one another and gaining something from it. And I think a lot of times when we have discussions, we don't really recognize what the other person is pulling from the conversation, if anything. And it doesn't always have to be information that they gain just from what you're saying. They can be, kind of taking in what you're saying and then thinking thoughts of their own and then taking something completely different away from that conversation than you maybe intended to. But aside from that, the point of this is that we all have different perspectives, and as we share these perspectives with one another, we can gain so much insight within ourselves and this other person that's in front of us about what is going on within just their thought processes and the things that's going on within them and how you're receiving those things. Something that's really big just with this whole idea of just everything that I'm speaking about with this podcast, and the reason why I bring up so much of not listening to what people say is because so often truths are relative. It's relative to the individual that believes that truth. And that's something that we have to kind of recognize as we interact with other people in the world, because it can allow ourselves to just be more at ease as we live our own lives and think our own things, because we recognize that we have our own thoughts, we have our own ideas, we have our own beliefs about things, and other people have that same conviction within themselves. So by simply recognizing the fact that someone else can hold very strong beliefs that are opposite of yours, it can be something that can allow that conversation when you come together to speak about that thing for it to be something that's conducive, because both of you recognize that you're not trying to force anyone else to believe what you're saying. You're just sharing information on a topic and maybe receiving a new understanding of it at the end of it. But as I thought more about this idea of relative truths, it kind of started getting me on the thoughts of just treating others as you want to be treated. And, this is something that can go for our thoughts and our ideas, because as we share our thoughts and ideas, we would want to be heard and we want to at least be listened to in some kind of way when we're speaking our truths. And the same thing happens when other people are speaking their truths to us. It's something that we would want to kind of receive that in some kind of way. I'm not saying that you have to sit through people's messages if you don't believe in what they're saying. Like, that's not something that I'm saying that you have to do, but more or less, like, if you're having a discussion and the discussion is flowing fine, but then it gets on a topic that maybe you disagree on, the treating others as you would like to be treated, if that disagreement happens, if it happened on your end, you wouldn't want to be shut down, so don't shut down the other individual. I think we can have more conducive conversations if we start to treat people as we would like to be treated ourselves, as we have these conversations that go into kind of more touchy territories, because first off, those type of conversations are the most meaningful conversations, yet they're the ones that we don't like to have because they're more sensitive. They're the ones that are touchy. They're the ones that are buzzkills if you start to have those conversations, because they're, something that's controversial maybe. But at the end of the day, we can't have any improvement. We can't make any changes if we don't have these conversations. So the conversations are important. So we have to figure out the best way to navigate those conversations when we're having them. And as I thought more about this conversation of, just having two different opposing views, I started to realize, like, that is the essence of having a constructive conversation, is to treat others as you would like to be treated. If you would like to have a conversation where there's not any hostility, where you're being heard and you're being understood and you're not being shut down, then have that conversation and approach conversations in that same way. And as we do that more and more, approaching conversations and approaching people as we would like to be approached, then we ourselves can have more meaningful interactions with these people, even if we completely disagree on different topics. And of course, as I thought more and more about this idea of treating others as you treat yourself, it did go into that idea of the ways that we just interact with other people on a general basis. Not just when having conversations, but just when walking down the street and speaking to other people or waving to other people or just passing people by. There's so much loss of interaction that happens, and so much of a distance that seems to be like pervade our society, where it keeps people from really interacting with one another. And I'm not saying you have to like walk down the street and like smile and wave at every individual that you walk by, but there's a shutdown that seems to happen. And it's not something that would be a problem if I didn't start to notice that this shutdown is happening within the lives of every individual. Where as we close ourselves off in public, in the public eye and around other people, as we shut ourselves off, we're also shutting ourselves off to ourselves. We don't allow ourselves to express ourselves in different ways because most of our lives we're shutting that part off. So in this idea of treating others as you want to treat yourself, we want to express ourselves. We want to be free to live our lives and have our interests and have our likes and dislikes, and know that that's okay. Know that at the end of the day that we will still be accepted and we'll still be loved, and that is something that we would want for ourselves. That's how we would want to be treated in ourselves. So as we go into the world and as we interact with other people, it could be something so beneficial for us to start to embrace our differences and our unique abilities and the things that make us amazing and individual, and I think that that's something that is so critical in just being ourselves in this world, and allowing ourselves to be ourselves in this world is not only presenting ourselves in the world, but also treating other people with that compassion and that understanding and saying, yes, like, you are different. I've never seen anyone like you. And that is so amazing. And as we start to embrace the differences of other people, and as we start to embrace the differences outside of us, we start to embrace ourselves more in the differences in the ways that we can be uniquely ourselves in the world. And just like this idea of treating others as we treat ourselves, it pervades something so much more than just being nice to your neighbor. I think it allows us and ourselves to be ourselves in the world because we're treating the outside world as we would want to be treating ourselves. And I feel like as people, as humans, as we collectively look at this idea of treating others as we want to treat ourselves, we can see that there's a common theme. Many people want love, we want compassion, we want connection, we want just meaningful interactions. We want to live our lives and not feel like we're judged or like we're limited or anything like that. And there are so many things that we have common ground on as humans. And I think as we look at that common ground and recognize that that common ground has so many levels on it as far as just the differences and the ways that they can be expressed in the world, it all comes down to this common ground. And as we look beneath all those different layers of all that uniqueness and see that, like, there is this unity that we have as far as just the values that we possess. And even though we express them differently, even though we express them in the unique way, like the unique, amazing, beautiful way that we express them, there is this underlying thing that can connect all of us. And as we look at that, we can start to look at the world with a more compassionate eye, knowing that other people just want the same thing that we want. And as we express that love in the world, as we give that unconditional love to the world and to ourselves, then we can freely move about and just be ourselves in the world. We don't have to hide, and we don't have to shelter ourselves. We don't have to shut parts of ourselves off because we feel like it's unacceptable. Treat others as you want to be treated, and you'll feel like you are more free to live your life, because the people around you are going to be just as open and willing to accept things because you're willing to accept things and you're open to hearing them speak about whatever they need to speak about. As we start to have these conversations, I know sometimes that we have people in our lives where we open up to and they don't really receive that back, and we reflect that back to ourselves as, oh, maybe I shouldn't open up anymore. So then you start to shut down. You start to do that very same thing that I'm speaking about, of that shutting down and not allowing this thing to be, not allowing other people to just recognize that you're presenting yourself as you are and that you're accepting them as they are as well. And when there's this reflection that's happening, we can see that there's just a connection that happens. It's kind of like when you're with a friend that's down or something like that. If you go over to them and you just start being really peppy and completely opposite, it's going to be somewhat of a turnoff. But if you get there with them and you understand them and you sit there with them in that place that they are, it's something that brings a closer connection. So as we think about that idea in all these different layers of our lives, we can start to see that as we just meet other people where they are, we can also, express ourselves on that same level. I say time and time again not to believe the things that people tell you, just straight for what it is, and like to think about it for yourself and see how it resonates with you. And I say that because of this same reason of, treating others as you want to treat yourself. Well, that and so much more. But in this world, we have never really been told that. We've always been told to just believe what I say and, take it for what it is. Believe the teacher, believe the doctor, believe all these other people. And, of course, many of them have knowledge and things that are useful and will guide you in the right direction. But a lot of times there are things that are being told to us that are demeaning, that are demoralizing, that are, diminishing towards just who we are and the abilities that we are able to achieve in this world. And those are the messages that we don't really have to take in. Those are the messages that are disempowering, and the ones that we have to really think about is like, does this really feel good for me? Is this something that empowers me and motivates me to the direction that I want to go? So with this idea of treating others as you want to be treated, I just I've always been told to kind of just think about things critically, and I've always had that kind of critical eye with thinking about information. So as I want to be treated with the ability to discern my own information and take in my own information and not be told to just believe something or do something, that's something that like I believe, that's something how I would like to live my life. So as I present this to you, I would also want that for you. I'd want you to, feel, just even outside of the situation of just me speaking to you, with every situation outside of you, take it with that grain of salt of saying like, is this something that is valuable for me? Is this something that is useful for me and motivating for me? And as we do that within our own lives, we can start to do that with other people in their lives, and we can stop trying to force our ideas and our opinions on other people. And, we can just express them in a non-judgmental way, in a non-like forced kind of way. And it allows that conversation to flow in a more meaningful way, kind of like I was speaking about in the beginning, where we can have our beliefs and the things that we value and things that we are adamant for, and we can express that in a way that's going to not just force someone to believe the things that we're believing, but to just convey it in a way that's like, this is something that I'm not trying to force on you, but if this is information that you want to receive, then receive it. And it's something that we can also take value in when we're receiving information in the world. As we practice that within our own lives and in the lives of the people that we interact with, we can start to accept that more and not just take things as they are. Because I think that's something that's a habit as well, is for us to just take information as it is and say like, this is true. We see like a feed on Facebook or on Twitter or some kind of news feed or something, and not really considering the whole story for what that is, not recognizing that this is an article that you can see who wrote the article. You can see like that this is probably an opinionated article in some kind of way. So put your own opinion on the idea. Research it for yourself if it's something that seems like it's kind of obscure based on the news that you're reading. As we kind of discern this information for ourselves and express that it's okay for other people to discern that information as well, then we can just live our lives more freely, taking in information and seeing if it's something that's valuable for us, and not feeling like we're uncertain or have some kind of anxiety because we're not readily believing it. And that's something that's really big with this whole information thing, is that people will gain momentum on a certain belief or on certain ideas, and that momentum will just allow other people to just tag on and just believe that that is the truth, even if it doesn't really sit right with them. But since so many other people are kind of believing in it, it's kind of like, oh, like, am I not right for believing in this? Am I doing something wrong for not believing in this? So we kind of just like merge into this belief, not really seeing if it fits well with who we are. So that's kind of just like this whole idea of, treating others as you want to be treated. It goes into not only just emotionally, physically treating others as you want to be treated, but also in that intellectual way, in that way of expressing ourselves. Like, treat others as you want to be treated. You want to be free to express yourself. You want to be free to take in the information that you want to take in. You want to be free to love and get love back. You want to be free to just do what is most meaningful for you. And as we want to do that, as we think about that, as we think about how we want to be treated with all those freedoms and all those, expressions of self, we can take that to the outside world and start to allow others to do that. And I think it really is an allowance because, again, our society hasn't really allowed us to just think for ourselves. It's always been like, think this way, do this thing. If you're not doing this, then you're doing it wrong. And I think as we allow ourselves to just be ourselves more and think for ourselves more and really discern what is truthful for us more, we can get to who we truly are and recognize who we truly are and recognize that there is a understanding that is just within all of us as people, that we can create common ground even if we have differences, that we can have love in this world even through our differences. And it starts with just treating others as you would like to be treated in yourself. And, some people are really good at giving love and giving compassion to other people, but they're not giving it to themselves. And that's also what this is about. you have to treat yourself also as you treat others in the world. So if you're giving others love and compassion and understanding, and you're telling them those things that are motivating, but you yourself are talking down on yourself, you yourself are not giving yourself love or compassion or understanding, then recognize that and reflect that back into you, because you're capable of it. You know you're capable of it because you've given it. You're constantly giving it. So give it to yourself. Because if we keep giving it to other people and not giving it to ourselves, then you're going to drain yourself. You're not replenishing the well. You're just giving out the water. So replenish your own well and allow it to overflow. And where people can, drink from the love and the compassion that you give, but allow your well to overflow before you, start to give away your abundance and your love. You have so much value in just who you are. And once you recognize that, and once you look at yourself and give yourself that love that you give to others, you can provide so much more to the world than you know. So that's really all I have for this episode. It's kind of a shorter one, or longer than I expected, but that's all I really had for this idea of treat others as you would want to be treated. And yeah, that's all I really got. So if you have any ideas or questions or anything that you'd like to add to this idea, you can send that to everything.sunpodcast@gmail.com. You can join any of the social media groups: Instagram, everything.sunpodcasts, Twitter @everysunpodcast, and the Facebook group @everysunpodcast as well. So yeah, I love you all, and I will see you next time.